Have you ever felt unseen, undervalued, or simply taken for granted in your relationships? It's a scenario that stings. Your efforts go unnoticed, your presence becomes routine, and suddenly, it feels like you faded into the background of someone else's life. But what if I told you there's a way to transform this dynamic completely? Not by shouting louder or doing more, but by doing the opposite. By stepping back, by disappearing. This might sound counterintuitive. Isn't being present the key to building stronger connections? That's the common belief. Yet, often constant presence breeds complacency, not appreciation. Here's where a powerful secret comes into play. Your absence can speak volumes where your words and actions have fallen silent. Think about it. When was the last time you truly valued something you thought would always be there? Human psychology gravitates towards scarcity. What's always accessible loses its allure, while what's suddenly out of reach becomes infinitely desirable. By learning to disappear, you create a ripple effect in your relationships that can reignite attention, respect, and longing. But here's the catch. Disappearing isn't about playing manipulative games. It's not a tactic to punish or guilt others. It's a practice of cultivating self-worth and allowing the natural dynamics of relationships to reset. It's about embracing stoicism and realizing that by prioritizing your growth, confidence, and independence, you radiate a magnetic energy that draws others toward you. So how do you do it? How can you step away in a way that feels empowering, not petty? And how does this simple yet profound shift lead others to chase you back, often more fervently than ever before? Let's dive into the first of 7 transformative principles: the power of absence. Stick around until the end to discover how these insights can completely reshape how you view relationships, not just romantically but across all areas of life. 1. The power of absence. Imagine you're holding a beautiful object in your hands, something rare and precious. At first, it captures all your attention. You study its details, admire its uniqueness, and feel a strong connection to it. But as time goes on, the intensity of your admiration fades. You start to take it for granted because it's always there, always accessible. Then one day it's gone. Not broken, not destroyed, just absent. How does that make you feel? The loss is undeniable, isn't it? This analogy mirrors human relationships. When we are always present, always within reach, we risk becoming overlooked. Absence, however, disrupts this pattern. It creates space for reflection and stirs emotions that only emerge when something or someone is no longer easily available. Absence ignites curiosity. When you step back, people begin to wonder, where did they go? Are they okay? Did I do something wrong? This isn't about causing anxiety, but about awakening awareness. The mind naturally fixates on unresolved situations. When someone important disappears, their presence suddenly becomes a priority. They occupy more mental space than when they were physically present. But let me ask you this. Why do we hesitate to embrace absence? Why do we cling to the belief that constant proximity is the only way to show we care? Part of the answer lies in fear. We fear being forgotten. We fear losing control. Yet Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control: our actions, our intentions, and our growth. Can you see how stepping back, far from being a loss, is a declaration of your value? Let's ground this idea in a simple, everyday example. Picture a friendship where one person constantly initiates plans, messages, and calls. Over time, this dynamic becomes one-sided. The initiator begins to feel drained, even resentful. Now imagine that person stops. No messages, no calls. At first, the silence feels awkward, maybe even tense. But what happens next? Often the other party starts to reach out, realizing how much effort had been taken for granted. The power of absence isn't about punishing others, but about rebalancing energy. It's about showing, not telling, what life feels like without your contribution. This shift creates a natural equilibrium where both parties begin to invest equally. Absence also fosters self-reflection, not just for others, but for yourself. When you step away from constant engagement, you gain clarity. You begin to see relationships for what they truly are: free from the noise of daily interaction? Is the connection reciprocal? Does it align with your values? How does it contribute to your growth? These are questions worth asking, yet we rarely pause long enough to explore them. In Stoic relationships, the ability to step back reflects strength, not weakness. It demonstrates that you value your own time and energy. It's a statement that you won't exhaust yourself trying to earn validation. Instead, you understand that absence is a tool for revealing who truly values you and who does not. It's a courageous act of prioritizing your well-being and inviting others to meet you halfway. But here's an important note of caution. Absence must be intentional, not reactionary. If you disappear out of anger, frustration, or a desire to manipulate, the effect will backfire. The goal is to create space, not conflict. Before stepping back, ask yourself, am I doing this to punish, or am I doing this to protect my peace and grow? The latter leads to authentic transformation, the former erodes trust. So how do you put this into practice? Start small. The next time you feel unappreciated, resist the urge to overextend yourself. Take a step back and observe. Notice how others respond when your efforts are no longer constant. Use this time to reconnect with your passions, goals, and values. As you grow, you'll find that your presence becomes more intentional and your absence more impactful. Absence isn't just a tool for relationships. It's a reflection of self-respect. By embracing the power of stepping away, you send a clear message to the world. I value myself enough to let others miss me. 2. The emotional impact of absence. Why is it that people often don't realize what they have until it's gone? This question strikes at the heart of human behavior and the emotional dynamics that absence creates. When you disappear, you trigger a powerful psychological response that goes far beyond the surface. Absence invites longing, reflection, and ultimately deeper appreciation. It's not magic, it's human nature. But understanding how this dynamic works and harnessing it intentionally can change the way you approach relationships forever. Consider this. Have you ever found yourself thinking about someone more after they were no longer a constant part of your life? Maybe it was an old friend who suddenly moved away or a loved one who grew distant. Whatever the reason, their absence left a noticeable void. That void is where emotional impact begins. It's in that space where reflection happens, reflection that can reignite appreciation, respect, and even desire. When you step away, you allow others the opportunity to evaluate what your presence truly meant. People often don't think about what someone contributes to their lives until that contribution is no longer there. This isn't about manipulation, it's about giving space for the natural process of recognition to unfold. Absence forces the mind to confront a fundamental question: what do I miss and why? Now, let's pause for a moment. If you've made it this far, it's clear that you resonate with the power of stepping back. Before we go deeper, let's take a second to interact. If you're enjoying this video and finding value in these insights, do me a favor. Like this video and comment number 1 below to let me know you're here, paying attention, and ready to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. This channel is all about giving you practical, life-changing wisdom you can apply right now. Returning to the emotional impact of absence, it's important to understand how it taps into one of the most basic aspects of human psychology, the Zeigarnik effect. This concept, named after psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, refers to the tendency for unfinished or unresolved tasks to stay on our minds more than completed ones. When someone who is important to us suddenly disappears, it creates a kind of unfinished business in our thoughts. We find ourselves dwelling on their absence, replaying memories, and wondering why they're no longer around. This mental replay can lead to profound realizations. Someone who may have been overlooked or undervalued becomes the focus of attention. Their absence creates a vacuum, and in filling that vacuum, emotions like appreciation and longing emerge. But here's the critical piece. This doesn't happen overnight. The process takes time, which is why patience is essential when stepping back. Absence also amplifies the value of presence. Imagine 2 scenarios. In the first, you're constantly available to someone, always there to offer advice, support, or companionship. In the second, you're present only selectively, appearing when it truly matters. Which version of you do you think others will cherish more? The second, of course. Scarcity creates value, and when your presence feels intentional rather than obligatory, it becomes something others actively seek. This principle applies not just in personal relationships but in all areas of life. Think about the last time a favorite artist or public figure went on a hiatus. Their absence likely made you miss their work more deeply, and when they returned, the anticipation heightened your excitement. The same dynamic plays out in interpersonal connections. When you step back, you give others the chance to feel your absence, and by extension, to appreciate your presence more. But let's address an important question. Doesn't this approach risk alienating people or making them feel abandoned? The answer depends on your intent and execution. If your absence comes from a place of anger or manipulation, it can damage trust. However, when it's done thoughtfully, with clear communication and self-respect, it creates a positive emotional shift. This is where Stoicism comes into play. As Stoicism teaches us, we cannot control how others react, but we can control our actions and intentions. By stepping back with integrity, you allow others to reflect without jeopardizing the relationship. Think about a healthy balance. When you step away, don't vanish completely or indefinitely. Instead, focus on creating a rhythm, a push and pull that keeps the relationship dynamic. For example, instead of being the one who always reaches out, wait for the other person to initiate contact. If you've been overly involved in someone's life, reduce your involvement gradually and intentionally. These small shifts can make a big difference in how others perceive and value you. Another powerful aspect of absence is that it allows you to observe others' reactions. Or do they reach out to check on you? Do they make an effort to reconnect? Or do they let the silence linger without noticing? These reactions reveal the true nature of the relationship. They show you who values your presence and who may have been taking it for granted. At the same time, use this period of absence to focus on yourself. What have you been neglecting in your own life while prioritizing others? What hobbies, goals, or passions could you reignite? By investing in your own growth, you become not only more fulfilled but also more magnetic to others. Independence and confidence are incredibly attractive qualities, and they flourish when you take the time to prioritize your well-being. Let me ask you, when was the last time you took a step back to focus on yourself? If the answer is I can't remember, then now is the perfect time to start. Remember, absence isn't just a tool for relationships. It's a form of self-care. By stepping away, you create space for reflection, growth, and renewal, both for yourself and for those around you. As we close this section, let's revisit the key takeaway. The emotional impact of absence is profound because it stirs reflection, curiosity, and appreciation. It's a reminder that sometimes less is more. By stepping back, you give others the opportunity to chase you, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire. And in doing so, you strengthen the connection in a way that constant presence never could. Before we move on, let's take another quick pause. If this resonates with you, and you're ready to learn even more about how absence can transform your relationships, hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss future videos. Your growth is our priority, and we're here to guide you every step of the way. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. What has been your experience with stepping back? I'd love to hear your perspective. Now that we've explored the emotional impact of absence, let's move on to the next principle. What happens when people take you for granted, and how can stepping back help reclaim your value? Stick around to find out. 3. Why people take you for granted. Why do people take us for granted? This question cuts deep, doesn't it? It's a painful realization to feel overlooked or undervalued, especially when you've invested so much time, energy, and emotion into a relationship. Yet, the reality is that this dynamic is more common than we might want to admit. To understand why this happens, we need to confront some uncomfortable truths about human nature and the dynamics of familiarity. Think about the relationships in your life. Are there people you've grown so accustomed to that you've stopped noticing their efforts? Perhaps a family member who always checks in on you, or a friend who's always there to listen. When someone is consistently present, their contributions often become part of the background, reliable, yes, but easy to overlook. This is the double-edged sword of familiarity. While it fosters connection, it also risks breeding complacency. The same principle applies when you're the one being taken for granted. The more you give without pause or boundaries, the more others come to expect it. It's not necessarily malicious, it's simply how people adapt. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. When something becomes a constant in our lives, whether it's material, emotional, or relational, we quickly normalize it. The extraordinary becomes ordinary. But here's a critical question to consider. Are you unknowingly teaching people to take you for granted? By always being available, always saying yes, and always putting others' needs ahead of your own, you may be signaling that your time, energy, and presence are unlimited resources. And what happens to resources we assume will never run out? We stop valuing them. Let's explore this further. Imagine someone in your life who always says yes, no matter the request, no matter how inconvenient they show up. At first, you might appreciate their reliability, but over time, their constant presence becomes an expectation rather than a gift. You stop questioning whether they'll say yes because they always do. The same pattern plays out in reverse when you're the one constantly giving. Your efforts become predictable, and predictability, while comforting, can also be undervalued. Does this mean you should stop being generous, reliable, or caring? Of course not. Stoicism reminds us that our actions should align with our values, not with the expectations of others. But it also teaches us the importance of boundaries, of knowing where your responsibility ends and another's begins. In Stoic relationships, balance is key. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and constantly overextending yourself only depletes your energy without increasing your value in the eyes of others. To reclaim your worth, you must first shift the dynamics of how you show up. The next time someone makes a request, pause before responding. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of genuine desire, or am I doing it out of obligation? If it's the latter, consider stepping back. This isn't about withholding care, but about recalibrating the balance of give and take in your relationships. Another reason people may take you for granted is that they don't fully understand the weight of your contributions. This is especially true in situations where your efforts are invisible or behind the scenes. For instance, in a work setting, you might quietly handle tasks that prevent major issues but never receive recognition because the problems you've solved never surfaced. Similarly, in personal relationships, emotional labor, listening, supporting, managing conflicts, often goes unnoticed because it's not tangible. This lack of awareness doesn't mean your efforts don't matter. It simply means they're not being acknowledged. And acknowledgement often comes only when something is absent. This is why stepping back can be so powerful. When you remove yourself from a dynamic where you're undervalued, it forces others to confront what your presence truly meant. The silent work you once did becomes glaringly obvious in its absence. Stepping back also disrupts the cycle of complacency. Think about it. If you continue to show up in the same way without addressing the imbalance, the dynamic remains unchanged. But when you step away, you introduce a new element, space. Space for others to notice, reflect, and, most importantly, miss what you brought to the table. Yet stepping back isn't easy. It requires courage and a deep sense of self-worth. Stoicism can guide us here. By focusing on what we can control, our actions, boundaries, and mindset, we can let go of the fear of being forgotten or replaced. True Stoicism isn't about retreating into isolation. It's about cultivating inner strength and knowing that your value doesn't diminish when you're not constantly proving it. Now let's address a common concern. What if stepping back doesn't make a difference? What if the other person doesn't notice or care? This is a possibility, and it's one that requires honest self-reflection. If someone doesn't appreciate your absence, it may be a sign that the relationship was one-sided to begin with. While this realization can be painful, it's also liberating. It frees you to invest your energy in relationships that are truly reciprocal and nourishing. On the other hand, when someone does notice and responds to your absence, it creates an opportunity for deeper connection. Their effort to reconnect signals that they value you and are willing to invest in the relationship. This is where meaningful conversations can take place, conversations about balance, appreciation, and how to move forward in a way that honors both parties. As you reflect on why people take others for granted, consider how you can apply these insights in your own life. Are there relationships where you've been giving too much without receiving enough in return? Are there dynamics where you feel unseen, despite your efforts? If so, what small steps can you take to create space and allow for reflection? These questions aren't easy, but they're necessary for growth. In the end, being taken for granted isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of unbalanced dynamics. By stepping back, you give yourself the chance to reset those dynamics and reestablish your value. And as you do, remember that the goal isn't to make others chase you out of desperation or guilt. It's to create a relationship built on mutual respect, appreciation, and understanding. Through this process, you'll discover that absence isn't about losing connection, it's about strengthening it. When done thoughtfully, it can transform not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. And that perhaps is the most valuable outcome of all. 4. Strategic disappearance. How to do it right. Stepping back from relationships isn't about vanishing into thin air or leaving others in confusion. It's a deliberate, thoughtful practice. When done correctly, strategic disappearance can recalibrate dynamics, create space for reflection, and ultimately strengthen your connections. But when done carelessly or with manipulative intent, it can damage trust and leave relationships in disrepair. The key lies in understanding how to disappear in a way that aligns with your values and communicates your worth. Let's start with a crucial question. Why do you want to step back? If your motivation is rooted in frustration, anger, or the desire to punish, pause for a moment. Strategic disappearance isn't about playing games, it's about creating balance. As Stoicism teaches us, our actions should reflect inner strength, not reactionary emotions. By grounding your decision in self-respect rather than resentment, you ensure that your absence is a tool for growth rather than harm. Now, let's break down how to disappear strategically and effectively. The first step is to identify the relationships or situations where stepping back is necessary. Are you constantly initiating contact with someone who rarely reciprocates? Do you feel drained because you're overextending yourself in a dynamic that feels one-sided? Recognizing these patterns is the foundation of your strategy. Without clarity, you risk withdrawing from relationships that are healthy or meaningful simply because of temporary frustrations. Once you've identified where to step back, the next step is communication, or, in some cases, a lack thereof. This might sound contradictory, but hear me out. In relationships where there's mutual respect, it's important to communicate your intentions. For example, you might say, "I need some time to focus on myself for a while. I'll be a little less available, but it's nothing personal." This kind of honesty builds trust and ensures that your absence isn't misinterpreted. In other cases, particularly where the relationship is imbalanced or distant, silence can be more powerful. Instead of announcing your withdrawal, simply stop initiating. Let the natural rhythm of the relationship take over. If the other person values you, they'll notice the change and make an effort to reconnect. If they don't, their inaction speaks volumes. But let me ask you, how comfortable are you with silence? For many, the idea of not explaining themselves feels unsettling. We fear being misunderstood or judged. Yet Stoicism reminds us that we cannot control how others perceive us. What we can control is how we act. By embracing silence, you give others the opportunity to reflect on their behavior without the distraction of explanations or justifications. Timing is another crucial element of strategic disappearance. Disappearing at the wrong moment, during a crisis, for example, can create unnecessary conflict or confusion. Instead, choose a time when stepping back will have the greatest impact. This often means waiting until patterns of complacency have set in. If someone has grown used to your constant presence, your sudden absence will be more noticeable and thought-provoking. Let's pause for a quick moment. If you're finding this video helpful, and you're ready to learn more about how to create healthier, more balanced relationships, like this video and comment number 1 below. Your feedback helps us create even more content that resonates with you. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Your growth is our mission, and we're here to guide you every step of the way. Returning to the strategy, one of the most challenging aspects of disappearance is resisting the urge to re-engage too quickly. When you step back, there's often an initial wave of discomfort, not just for the other person, but for you. You may wonder, what if they don't notice? What if they move on? These fears are normal, but they're also a test of your resolve. By staying true to your decision, you allow the process to unfold naturally. During this time, focus on self-improvement. Use the space you've created to invest in yourself, whether that means pursuing a hobby, advancing your career, or simply taking time to rest and recharge. This not only benefits you but also enhances your presence when you do return to the relationship. Independence and self-confidence are magnetic qualities, and they flourish when you prioritize your growth. Let's explore an example. Imagine you've been in a relationship where you're always the one planning dates, initiating conversations, and making decisions. Over time, your partner has come to rely on you for these things without contributing much effort. One day, you decide to step back. You stop planning dates, you wait for them to initiate conversations, and you let them take the lead. At first, they might feel confused or even frustrated. But over time, they begin to realize how much effort you were putting into the relationship, and they start to step up. This isn't about manipulation, it's about creating balance. By stepping back, you allow the relationship to reset. You show the other person what life feels like without your constant input, and in doing so, you give them the chance to appreciate and reciprocate your efforts. However, it's important to approach this process with patience. Change doesn't happen overnight. The other person may need time to recognize the shift and adjust their behavior. This is where Stoicism becomes invaluable. By focusing on your own growth and maintaining a sense of inner calm, you avoid becoming overly attached to the outcome. Whether the relationship improves or fades away, you can take comfort in knowing that you acted with integrity. As we wrap up this section, let's reflect on the core principle of strategic disappearance. It's not about punishing others, it's about creating space for growth and balance. When done thoughtfully, it can transform relationships, making them stronger and more reciprocal. And in the process, it reminds you of your own worth. Before we move on, let me remind you to subscribe if you haven't already. We're building a community of like-minded individuals who are committed to personal growth and meaningful connections, and we'd love for you to be part of it. Also, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. What's your experience with stepping back from a relationship? I'd love to hear your perspective. Next, we'll explore how stepping away can rekindle relationships in ways you might not expect. Stay tuned for insights that could reshape the way you approach connection and commitment. Let's keep going on this journey of discovery together. 5. How disappearing rekindles relationships. Absence does something remarkable. It rekindles the very emotions and connections that familiarity can dull. When you step back, you're not just creating physical or emotional space, you're creating a void. And in that void, relationships have the opportunity to grow stronger, deeper, and more meaningful. But how exactly does this happen? What is it about absence that reignites the spark in relationships, whether they're romantic, platonic, or professional? To understand this, let's revisit the basic human tendency to gravitate toward what feels scarce. When someone disappears, their absence creates a sense of longing. Memories resurface, emotions are stirred, and the mind begins to fill the gap with reflections on what was once there. This process is natural, even inevitable. It's part of what makes absence such a powerful tool, not for manipulation, but for genuine reconnection. Consider a romantic relationship that has grown stagnant over time. Perhaps both partners have settled into routines that leave little room for excitement or novelty. They see each other every day, talk about the same topics, and slowly their interactions become predictable. This doesn't mean the love is gone. It simply means the spark has been buried under the weight of routine. When one partner steps back, perhaps taking time to focus on themselves or creating intentional distance, it disrupts this pattern. The other partner begins to notice the change and reflect on what they may have taken for granted. This isn't about creating fear or anxiety in the other person. It's about giving them the chance to miss you. When someone misses you, they're reminded of your value. They recall the moments that made your connection special, the qualities they admire in you, and the ways your presence enriches their life. This kind of reflection often leads to renewed effort to reconnect, to rekindle, and to rebuild. But stepping back doesn't only benefit the other person, it benefits you as well. Absence allows you to gain perspective. It gives you the space to evaluate the relationship objectively. Are your needs being met? Is this connection aligned with your values and goals? Is there mutual respect and appreciation? These are questions we often ignore when we're immersed in the day-to-day dynamics of a relationship. By stepping back, you create the clarity needed to answer them honestly. One of the most surprising aspects of disappearance is how it fosters growth. When you're constantly present in someone's life, it can be easy to fall into patterns of dependency. They may rely on you for emotional support, decision-making, or even their sense of identity. While this reliance isn't inherently negative, it can sometimes stifle personal growth for both parties. By stepping back, you encourage the other person to develop their independence and resilience. At the same time, you give yourself the opportunity to grow, explore, and rediscover your own identity. This process of mutual growth can transform a relationship. When you and the other person come back together, you're not the same people you were before. You've both grown, and that growth adds new dimensions to the connection. It deepens your bond, making it more dynamic and fulfilling. Let's explore an example. Imagine you have a close friendship that has started to feel unbalanced. You're always the one offering advice, providing support, and initiating plans. Over time, you begin to feel drained. Instead of continuing this pattern, you decide to step back. You stop initiating contact and let the other person take the lead. At first, they might not notice, but as time passes, they begin to feel your absence. They realize how much they relied on your presence and start to make an effort to reconnect. In the process, they grow, they learn to contribute more to the friendship, to give as much as they take. And when you reconnect, your friendship is stronger and more balanced than ever before. But let's be clear. Stepping back isn't a guarantee that every relationship will flourish. Some connections may fade when you disappear, and that's okay. Not every relationship is meant to last. In fact, one of the most valuable lessons of this practice is learning which connections are worth nurturing and which are not. Absence reveals the truth of a relationship. It shows you who values your presence and who only appreciates it when it's convenient. This truth can be both liberating and challenging. It may mean letting go of relationships that no longer serve you, but it also opens the door to deeper, more meaningful connections with those who truly value you. In Stoicism, this principle aligns with the idea of focusing on what you can control, your actions, your growth, and your priorities, while accepting what you cannot. By embracing this mindset, you free yourself from the fear of losing relationships and instead focus on cultivating those that align with your values. Disappearance also rekindles relationships by creating a sense of novelty. In any connection, novelty is a powerful force. It keeps things fresh, exciting, and engaging. When you step back, you break the monotony of routine. Your absence creates curiosity and anticipation, which reignite the energy that may have waned over time. This is especially true in romantic relationships, where novelty plays a significant role in maintaining passion and intimacy. So how can you disappear in a way that rekindles relationships without causing harm or misunderstanding? The key is intention. Disappearance should never be about manipulation or testing others. It should be about creating space for reflection, growth, and renewed connection. Be thoughtful about how you step back and communicate your intentions when necessary. And most importantly, use this time to focus on yourself, your growth, your goals, and your well-being. As you practice this approach, you'll begin to notice a shift. Relationships that are meant to last will grow stronger, while those that are not will naturally fade. This process can be painful, but it's also deeply rewarding. It allows you to surround yourself with connections that are truly reciprocal and fulfilling. Remember, absence isn't about creating distance for the sake of distance. It's about creating space for something deeper, space for appreciation, reflection, and growth. When done thoughtfully, disappearing can rekindle relationships in ways that constant presence never could. It's a reminder that sometimes stepping back is the most powerful way to move forward. 6. The role of confidence and independence. Have you ever noticed how people are drawn to those who seem confident, self-assured, and independent? There's something magnetic about individuals who know their worth and don't rely on others to define their value. Confidence and independence are not just personal traits, they're powerful forces that can transform your relationships. When you disappear strategically, these qualities become your foundation, enabling you to step back with purpose and draw others toward you naturally. But what exactly makes confidence and independence so appealing? To answer this, we need to examine the underlying psychology of human connection. People are inherently attracted to strength, emotional, mental, and even spiritual strength. When you exude confidence, you send a clear message: I am whole, with or without you. This isn't arrogance or detachment, it's an affirmation of self-worth. And when you pair confidence with independence, you create a dynamic where others are inspired by your presence rather than dependent on it. Let's start with the concept of confidence. Confidence isn't about being loud or dominating a conversation. True confidence is quiet, steady, and rooted in self-awareness. It's about knowing your strengths and embracing your imperfections. When you're confident, you don't seek validation from others because you've already validated yourself. This self-assurance is incredibly attractive in any relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, or professional. Now, think about how confidence relates to strategic disappearance. When you step back from a relationship, it's natural to worry about how others will perceive your absence. Will they miss you? Will they chase you? Or will they move on? Confidence allows you to let go of these fears. It reminds you that your worth doesn't depend on someone else's reaction. Instead, you trust that the right people will recognize your value, even in your absence. Independence goes hand in hand with confidence. While confidence is about knowing your worth, independence is about living it. It's the ability to stand on your own, to pursue your passions, and to find fulfillment within yourself. When you're independent, you don't need others to complete you. You simply enjoy their company as an addition to your already rich and fulfilling life. Independence is particularly important when it comes to stepping back. When you're overly dependent on a relationship, the idea of disappearing can feel terrifying. What if they forget about you? What if the connection fades? Independence gives you the strength to take that step without fear. It reminds you that your happiness isn't tied to any one person or situation. But let's ask an important question. How can you cultivate confidence and independence if they don't come naturally to you? The answer lies in small, intentional actions. Start by setting boundaries. Learn to say no when something doesn't align with your values or priorities. Practice self-care, whether that means taking time for a hobby, pursuing a personal goal, or simply resting when you need it. And most importantly, remind yourself daily of your worth. This might sound simple, but these small actions build the foundation for unshakable confidence and independence. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you're in a romantic relationship where you've started to feel like your needs are being overlooked. Instead of overcompensating by giving more, doing more, or asking for validation, you decide to step back. You stop trying to fix everything and instead focus on yourself. You take up a new hobby, reconnect with old friends, or dedicate time to a personal goal you've been neglecting. As you do this, your confidence grows. You realize that your happiness doesn't depend on the relationship, it depends on you. And this shift in energy doesn't go unnoticed. Your partner begins to see you in a new light, drawn to your independence and renewed sense of self. Confidence and independence are also deeply connected to Stoicism. In Stoicism, there's a strong emphasis on focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you can't. You can't control how others respond to your absence, but you can control how you use that time to grow. By embracing this mindset, you free yourself from the need to chase or cling to relationships. Instead, you step back with grace, knowing that your worth is not up for negotiation. As we explore the role of confidence and independence, it's important to address a common misconception. Some people fear that being too confident or independent will make them seem unapproachable or distant. But the opposite is true. When you're confident and independent, you create a sense of stability that others find reassuring. People are drawn to those who are secure in themselves because it makes them feel secure as well. Now, let's connect this back to the broader theme of disappearance. When you step away with confidence and independence, you create a powerful dynamic. Your absence doesn't feel like a void, it feels like a statement. It says, I value myself enough to prioritize my well-being. If you value me too, you'll make the effort to meet me where I am. This kind of energy is irresistible because it's authentic. It's not about playing games, it's about showing up for yourself. If this resonates with you, let me take a moment to ask for your support. Like this video and comment number 1 below if you're ready to embrace your confidence and independence. Your engagement helps us reach more people who need these insights. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to join a community that's committed to personal growth and meaningful relationships. As we wrap up this discussion, let's reflect on the core takeaway. Confidence and independence aren't just qualities, they're tools for transformation. They allow you to step back with purpose, create balance in your relationships, and attract the kind of connections that are truly fulfilling. When you embody these traits, you don't need to chase anyone. Instead, people are naturally drawn to you, inspired by your strength and self-assurance. In the end, the journey toward confidence and independence is deeply personal. It requires self-reflection, effort, and patience. But the rewards are worth it. By cultivating these qualities, you not only enhance your relationships but also elevate your entire life. So take that step back, embrace your worth, and watch how the world responds. 7. The risk of misuse and overdoing it. While stepping back and disappearing can be a transformative strategy for rekindling relationships and reclaiming your value, it's not without its risks. When misunderstood or misapplied, the practice can backfire, damaging trust and leaving relationships fractured. The difference between a strategic absence and a manipulative disappearance lies in your intent, timing, and approach. Understanding these nuances ensures that you use this powerful tool responsibly and effectively. One of the most significant risks of disappearing is the potential for misinterpretation. When you step back without clear communication or context, others may perceive your absence as rejection, punishment, or even indifference. This is particularly true in close relationships where trust is the foundation. A sudden withdrawal can feel like abandonment, leaving the other person confused or hurt. To avoid this, you must assess the relationship's dynamics and decide whether your disappearance requires explanation. For example, in a healthy relationship where communication is strong, it's often beneficial to express your intentions. You might say something like, I need some time to focus on myself and recharge. I'll be a bit quieter for a while, but I'm always here if you need me. This type of transparency can ease misunderstandings and ensure your absence is viewed as self-care rather than avoidance. In contrast, there are situations where silence speaks louder than words. When dealing with a relationship that has become one-sided or where respect is lacking, stepping back without explanation can send a powerful message. It forces the other person to reflect on their role in the dynamic and decide whether they're willing to make changes. However, even in these situations, it's essential to act with integrity. Your silence should never be weaponized to manipulate or guilt others. Another common pitfall is overdoing your disappearance. While absence can foster appreciation and reflection, too much distance can weaken the bond entirely. If your absence stretches on indefinitely, it risks becoming an exit rather than a reset. This is especially true in relationships where the other person values you but may not know how to navigate the new dynamic. In such cases, your prolonged absence might discourage them from reaching out, leading to unintended estrangement. To strike the right balance, consider the length and context of your disappearance. How much time is needed for both you and the other person to gain clarity? For some relationships, a few days or weeks might suffice. For others, particularly those with deeper imbalances, a longer period may be necessary. The key is to remain mindful of the relationship's needs while also honoring your own boundaries. Timing is another critical factor to consider. Disappearing during moments of conflict, crisis, or vulnerability can exacerbate the situation rather than resolve it. Imagine a friend confides in you during a difficult time, and you respond by stepping back without explanation. While your intention might be to create space, the timing sends a different message, that you're unavailable when they need you most. This doesn't mean you should always prioritize others over yourself, but it does highlight the importance of considering context before withdrawing. Another risk of misusing disappearance is that it can create a cycle of unhealthy behavior. If you step back with the expectation that others will chase you, you risk falling into a pattern where validation comes only from their response. This reliance on external validation contradicts the principles of Stoicism, which emphasize self-sufficiency and inner strength. The goal of stepping back should never be to test others or seek proof of your value. It should be a practice of self-respect and balance. Let's also address the emotional toll that disappearance can take on you. While stepping back is empowering, it's not without its challenges. You might feel conflicted, lonely, or uncertain about whether you've made the right decision. These emotions are natural, but they can become overwhelming if you haven't prepared yourself for the process. This is why self-reflection and personal growth are essential components of strategic disappearance. By focusing on your well-being during this time, you can navigate the emotional complexities with resilience. So how can you avoid these pitfalls and use absence as a tool for growth rather than harm? The first step is to clarify your intent. Are you stepping back to punish, manipulate, or prove a point? If so, reconsider your approach. Effective disappearance comes from a place of strength and self-awareness, not from a desire to control others. Ask yourself, am I doing this to create balance and reflection, or am I reacting out of frustration or anger? Next, consider the relationship's dynamics. Is this a connection worth preserving, or is it one that may naturally fade with time? Not every relationship will survive your absence, and that's okay. Part of this process is learning to let go of connections that no longer align with your values or well-being. However, if the relationship is meaningful to you, take care to ensure your absence doesn't cause unnecessary harm. Finally, use this time to focus on yourself. Absence isn't just about stepping away from others, it's about stepping toward your own growth. What can you learn about yourself during this period? What goals or passions can you pursue? How can you use this time to become a better, more fulfilled version of yourself? By investing in your own development, you not only enhance your life but also bring renewed energy and perspective to your relationships. In the end, the risks of misuse and overdoing disappearance are real, but they're also avoidable. With thoughtful intent, clear communication, and a commitment to personal growth, you can harness the power of absence responsibly and effectively. It's a practice that requires patience, discipline, and self-awareness, but the rewards are profound. When done right, stepping back doesn't just create space, it creates opportunities for reflection, growth, and deeper connection. By approaching absence with care and integrity, you ensure that its impact is not only transformative but also lasting. It becomes a tool for building stronger, more balanced relationships while honoring your own worth. And in the process, you discover the true power of stepping away, not as an escape, but as a step toward clarity and renewal. The journey of disappearing and watching how they chase you back is not about gains or control. It's about rediscovering balance, fostering growth, and embracing self-worth. By stepping back, you create space for reflection, for yourself and for others, allowing relationships to recalibrate in ways that constant presence never could. Absence, when done with intention and integrity, is a powerful tool. It shifts the dynamic from overextension to balance, from complacency to appreciation. But its real power lies in what it teaches you about yourself. It shows you that your value isn't tied to anyone else's approval. It's a reflection of your confidence, independence, and commitment to living authentically. As you've seen throughout this discussion, disappearing isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. It requires self-awareness, timing, and an understanding of the dynamics at play in each relationship. Some connections will grow stronger through this process, while others may fade away. Both outcomes are valuable because they bring clarity and truth to your life. Stoicism reminds us to focus on what we can control: our actions, our mindset, and our growth. By stepping back with purpose, you embody this principle, prioritizing your peace and progress without being tethered to the reactions of others. In the end, this isn't just about relationships, it's about how you choose to show up in the world. As you move forward, take a moment to reflect on the lessons we've explored. How can you create space in your relationships to foster appreciation and growth? What steps can you take to cultivate confidence and independence within yourself? And how will you use the power of absence not just to transform your relationships, but to elevate your life as a whole? If this journey resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like this video and comment number 1 below to let me know you're ready to embrace the power of strategic disappearance. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button to join a community dedicated to personal growth and meaningful connections. Together, we're building something transformative. Thank you for being here, for investing in yourself, and for taking the time to reflect on how absence can lead to renewal. Your growth is a testament to your strength, and I'm excited to see where this journey takes you. Until next time, take care, stay strong, and keep showing up for yourself. You deserve it.